I was sitting in the packed courtroom gallery, barely blinking. The tension in the air was thicker than courtroom silence itself. Cameras were rolling. The media was perched like hawks along the edges, capturing every movement, every expression. Adam Schiff, yes, that Adam Schiff, was seated at the prosecution's table, unusually tense. His tie was slightly loosened, and his fingers drummed anxiously against a thick stack of documents. Opposite him sat Judge Jeanine Pirro, no stranger to controversy herself, presiding with a look that could cut glass. "Mr. Schiff," she said, adjusting her glasses and glancing at the folder in front of her, "this court will not be bullied with baseless implications. If you have something solid to present, now's the time. Otherwise, we move on." Schiff stood up abruptly, his face flushed red. He wasn't going to let that slide. "Your Honor," he snapped, his voice shaking with rage, "I will not sit here and be lectured by someone who built her reputation screaming into a camera rather than practicing real law." The courtroom gasped. Cameras zoomed in. Judge Pirro's eyes narrowed. "Order in the court," she barked, banging her gavel once. "Mr. Schiff, you will immediately retract that statement or face contempt." But Schiff doubled down. "I said what I said, Judge. The American people deserve truth, not theatrics." Silence. Dead silence. Pirro slowly leaned forward. "Then I hope you're prepared for what comes next, Congressman," she said coldly. "Because you just crossed a line you can't walk back from." No one knew then what she meant exactly. But in the next few minutes, that courtroom, and the entire country, would find out. Judge Pirro didn't speak for a full 5 seconds after Adam Schiff's outburst, 5 seconds that felt like a full hour in that courtroom. Then she picked up a folder from the bench, her manicured fingers tapping it deliberately before she spoke. "You want to play games, Mr. Schiff," she said, her voice icy. "Then allow me to introduce into the record something your office conveniently forgot to disclose during discovery." Schiff's smirk faltered. "Clerk," Pirro commanded, "mark Exhibit 17B and prepare it for live display. I want everyone in this courtroom, and watching at home, to see what Congressman Schiff omitted." A screen lowered behind the judge's bench. The room leaned forward. Schiff's team scrambled at the table, whispering and flipping pages. The screen flashed to life, and there it was, an internal memo from Schiff's office. Dated. Signed. Confidential. The memo detailed direct communication with a whistleblower before any official investigation had begun, a fact Schiff had previously denied under oath on multiple platforms. Gasps spread across the courtroom like wildfire. Pirro's voice sharpened. "You accuse this court of theatrics. This isn't theater, Mr. Schiff. This is perjury, unless you can explain this document right now." Schiff looked like he'd just been punched in the gut. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His jaw clenched. I'll need to speak with counsel," he muttered. "No," Pirro interrupted sternly. "You chose to grandstand without your attorneys. Now, answer. Or I'll have no choice but to escalate." Whispers surged in the gallery. Even the cameramen were visibly stunned. Schiff slowly sat down, his face pale. It was the first time in years that Washington's loudest voice had nothing to say. And Judge Pirro wasn't finished yet. The courtroom hung in limbo. Judge Pirro leaned back, her expression unreadable. "Let the record show," she said clearly, "that Congressman Schiff declined to answer a direct judicial inquiry regarding potential misconduct under oath." That line alone was enough to ignite a firestorm. Reporters bolted out of the courtroom, phones already to their ears. The networks would be airing this moment within minutes, if not seconds. Everyone knew it. This wasn't just a hearing anymore, this was political detonation. Schiff sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the monitor that had just broadcast his memo to the world. His staff whispered frantically, one of them sliding a handwritten note toward him. He didn't read it. Judge Pirro continued, calm but forceful. I will be issuing a temporary suspension of the congressman's speaking privileges in this courtroom. Any further outbursts will result in immediate removal and possible contempt charges. Boom. You could hear it in the body language. Schiff had never been so publicly cornered. Not on the House floor. Not on live cable news. Not like this. From the back of the courtroom, a low voice rose, "Checkmate." Pirro glanced toward the source and nodded subtly. Indeed. The screen flicked off. The courtroom lights brightened slightly. But the weight of what had just happened still pressed against every person in the room. Schiff finally cleared his throat. "Your Honor. I'd like a recess." Pirro didn't flinch. "Denied. We proceed." As she shuffled through the next folder, Schiff's face twitched. Something was coming. Something worse. He wasn't just about to lose this hearing. He was about to lose control of his entire narrative. Judge Pirro turned the page in front of her, then looked directly at Schiff. "For the record," she said, "we are now entering phase 2 of this evidentiary hearing, and Congressman Schiff will be addressed not as a prosecutor, but as a potential respondent in violation of federal disclosure statutes." The courtroom erupted again, this time, louder. Schiff's mouth opened slightly in disbelief. His hands trembled. You can't do that," he stammered. "I'm not the one on trial here." Pirro raised an eyebrow. "Congressman, you may want to consult the rules of judicial oversight. When you submit fraudulent material into a federal proceeding, you become very much part of the case." Boom. A young associate from Schiff's team leapt up. "Your Honor, we object to this direction." "Sit down," Pirro snapped. "You're not even licensed in this district." The gavel cracked once, silencing the room again. Then Judge Pirro lifted another document, this time, a deposition from a former staffer. She didn't read it aloud, but held it up for the court clerk. This signed affidavit alleges that Congressman Schiff directed aides to withhold key information from this very court. If substantiated, we're talking obstruction. Gasps again. The term hung in the air like smoke, obstruction. Schiff finally stood up. Not defiant. Not angry. Just, stunned. He looked at the judge, then at the gallery. "This is political warfare," he muttered. "You're weaponizing the courtroom to make a scene." "No, Congressman," Pirro said, her voice like steel. "You made the scene. I'm simply pressing play." He sat back down, defeated, but the worst was still ahead. Outside the courthouse, protesters had already begun to gather. Inside, federal observers were arriving early, uninvited, but very welcome. And the next name on Judge Pirro's list? It wasn't Schiff. It was someone much higher up. Judge Pirro tapped her pen twice on the bench, then signaled to the bailiff. A sealed envelope was brought forward and handed to her. She held it up, eyes scanning the courtroom as if daring someone to interrupt. "This," she said firmly, "is a certified referral from the Office of Congressional Ethics. Not only does it corroborate the evidence we've seen so far, it names an additional party." Schiff barely turned his head, but his jaw clenched. He already knew. Pirro peeled open the envelope, slid out the document, and read aloud, "Pursuant to Title 5 U.S. Code, Section 1213, this body refers a complaint and accompanying evidence involving Congressman Adam Schiff and a senior member of the current administration." She paused for dramatic effect. "White House Chief Counsel Marsha Alden." The room exploded. Reporters shouted. Phones flew into the air. A few aides even ran out the door, no doubt alerting press teams that a whole new front had just opened. Schiff stood up abruptly. "Your Honor, this is an ambush. Marsha Alden has no connection to this proceeding." "On the contrary," Pirro said coolly. "You and Ms. Alden were in documented contact regarding the classification of whistleblower testimony, before this court even convened." She turned to the court clerk. "Prepare a subpoena for Ms. Alden." She will testify under oath, in this courtroom, in 72 hours. The gavel fell. Schiff looked like a man unraveling. This is political theater. You're turning a legal hearing into a spectacle. Pirro leaned forward, unshaken. You should have thought of that before you tried to outplay the system, Congressman. The curtains just rising. Outside, news trucks parked in rows. Inside, whispers were spreading among the federal observers now seated in the back. The truth was clawing its way to the surface, and Schiff's explosion was only the beginning. By the time Judge Pirro adjourned for the day, the courtroom was buzzing like a live wire. Adam Schiff exited quickly, flanked by his aides, eyes fixed on the marble floor as a swarm of reporters descended. Congressman, did you withhold evidence? Is the White House involved in the cover-up? Will you resign? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Back inside, Pirro remained on the bench, reviewing files in silence. The courtroom emptied, but she wasn't done. Her clerk handed her a manila folder stamped confidential. She didn't even blink. It contained transcripts, leaked transcripts, of Schiff's private communications with Alden. Texts. Emails. Voice memos. All turned over by someone inside his circle. And at the center of the leak, a former Schiff aide turned whistleblower, who had quietly met with Pirro's team just 2 nights before. Across D.C., panic spread like wildfire. The White House issued a vague statement: the administration maintains the highest ethical standards and is monitoring the situation. But that wasn't enough to stop the bleeding. Inside the Capitol, phones buzzed in closed-door meetings. Allies were distancing themselves from Schiff. Campaign strategists were already scrubbing social media accounts. And at the Department of Justice, sources confirmed, a parallel criminal inquiry had been greenlit. That night, on live cable news, Judge Jeanine Pirro appeared for a brief, unscheduled interview. Calm. Collected. Smirking. When asked if she thought Schiff's explosion was rehearsed, she simply said, "Oh, it wasn't an act." That was the sound of someone realizing the spotlight just turned into a searchlight. The screen faded to black. But in the shadows, someone else was watching, someone who hadn't been named yet. Because the memo trail didn't end with Schiff. Or Alden. There was another name. And that name was about to shake the entire Capitol. By the following morning, D.C. was on edge. Cable news had gone wall-to-wall. Headlines screamed across every outlet: Schiff implodes in court, Judge Pirro uncovers White House link, leaked documents suggest broader conspiracy, sources, DOJ eyes another power player. At 9:03 a.m., the sealed file was delivered directly to Judge Pirro's chambers under federal escort. No one, not her clerk, not her staff, was permitted to see what was inside. She opened it slowly, her eyes scanning line by line. Then she whispered a name. Not Schiff. Not Alden. Vice President William Halbridge. The document was a detailed communication log, email traffic and scheduling notes, revealing that Halbridge had not only been briefed on Schiff and Alden's coordination, but approved it. Even more damning. A single note, handwritten in the VP's own script: keep Pirro off this. Use soft pressure if necessary. Pirro stared at it in disbelief. They had tried to sideline her. Tried to neutralize the judge. And now she held the receipt. By midday, she convened an emergency closed-door session. Cameras were barred. Doors sealed. Federal marshals posted at every exit. In the room sat representatives from DOJ, OCE, and an internal investigator from the Office of the Vice President, all of whom left visibly shaken after the meeting. No one spoke to press. But something was coming. Something massive. That night, a single line crawled across a breaking news ticker: breaking, subpoena issued for sitting Vice President in Pirro Schiff inquiry. Washington went nuclear. The administration remained silent. Schiff's office stopped taking calls. Even Marcia Alden's social accounts went dark. Judge Pirro returned home under private security, saying only 3 words to reporters waiting at her gate: "I'm not done." And she wasn't. Because the biggest reveal hadn't been leaked yet. It was buried deep in one of those memos, under redacted ink, and known to just one person. Pirro. And what she knew next, could end careers by the dozen. Judge Pirro sat alone in her chambers, lit only by a brass desk lamp and the soft blue glow of a security monitor. Before her, spread across the table, were pages that most Americans would never see, not unless she made them public. Near the bottom of one particular memo, half obscured by redaction bars, was a clause so sensitive it was only visible to those with Level 5 federal clearance. But Pirro had the unedited copy. And what she read changed everything. In event of exposure, activate Protocol Sharon via Halbridge's office. Pirro must be discredited immediately. Use internal DOJ leverage or sympathetic press. It wasn't just about Schiff. It wasn't just about Alden. This was coordinated. Preemptive. Strategic sabotage written into official planning. And Judge Pirro was the target. Her phone buzzed, a secure line. "Judge, this is Marshal Levin. We've detected unusual surveillance activity outside your residence. Infrared sweeps show 2 heat signatures. Want us to engage?" "No," she said calmly. "Let them watch. They'll see what I do next." The next morning, Pirro filed a formal motion to unseal every document submitted under seal by Schiff's office, including those connected to the vice president's staff. The clerk tried to argue for a delay, but Pirro overrode protocol. Her statement was broadcast on the courthouse steps: "The American people are not pawns. They will see the truth, not the edited version, not the sanitized one. I will not be intimidated. And I will not back down." Across the country, millions tuned in. Twitter imploded. #Pirro Unsealed began trending worldwide. But inside the West Wing, the mood was darker. An urgent meeting convened in the Situation Room: Halbridge, White House counsel, and 2 unidentified intelligence officials. "Do we pull her license?" someone asked. Halbridge didn't blink. "No. We ruin her instead." He didn't know she had already read the next file. Didn't know what else she was holding. Didn't know that a second whistleblower, someone inside his circle, had already turned. And they had delivered recordings. Inside a heavily secured evidence vault beneath the courthouse, Judge Pirro listened with headphones on, alone, eyes locked forward, face unreadable. The recording wasn't grainy. It wasn't distorted. It was clear. A male voice, calm, authoritative, unmistakable, began to speak: "We can't let Pirro control the narrative. If she pushes that memo, Schiff's finished. Alden's exposed. And if she connects it to the security briefings from March, Halbridge goes down too. We need pressure points. Find them." Pause. Then a second voice chimed in, softer, but equally dangerous: "If she doesn't flinch, we'll leak the 2012 sealed opinion. That'll discredit her permanently." Judge Pirro's eyes narrowed. She knew exactly what they were referencing: an old, classified judicial memo she authored during her federal review tenure, misrepresented in closed circles, but never intended for public weaponization. They had it. And they were planning to use it. The voice on the recording continued. "We'll start with targeted media. Paint her as unstable. Aggressive. Go after her rulings. And if she still won't stop, we bring in Halbridge's contact at DOJ." Quietly. Pirro paused the recording. She took a long breath. The second whistleblower, a mid-level aide inside Halbridge's domestic security team, had given her 7 recordings like this. Each one worse than the last. Conspiracy. Obstruction. Blackmail. This wasn't about courtroom drama anymore. It was about a coordinated government takedown of a sitting judge, all to protect a corrupt chain of command. Within an hour, Pirro filed a sealed motion for emergency review under Article 2 challenge protocols. A move so rare, only 2 judges in the past 40 years had ever used it. It meant only one thing: she was going after the vice president directly. The courtroom was placed under full federal lockdown. No press. No cameras. Just the judge, a few officials, and a ticking bomb of evidence. And while Schiff sat quietly in legal isolation, Halbridge finally made his move. He called a press conference. And stood at the podium ready to lie, until someone behind the cameras hit play. The press conference was already tense when Vice President Halbridge stepped up to the podium. Cameras flashed. Journalists raised their hands. Every network cut to a live feed. He straightened his notes, cleared his throat, and began. Let me be clear, the recent allegations are politically motivated, reckless, and unfounded. At no point did I engage in any improper discussions with Congressman Schiff or his team regarding any classified matter. He paused for emphasis, letting the statement hang in the air. But before he could continue, the back wall of the press room flickered. Then, a sound. A voice. Not his. We can't let Pirro control the narrative, gasps erupted. The recording, had started playing live. Every camera stayed locked on Halbridge. His face drained of color as the full audio unfolded, word by word, his own voice spelling out his plan to destroy a federal judge. For 23 seconds, he stood frozen. Then the feed cut. Secret Service rushed in. The press room went dark. 1 hour later, Judge Pirro emerged from the federal courthouse, her voice echoing through a wall of microphones. What began as a courtroom hearing has revealed a conspiracy that stretched far beyond what anyone expected. No one, not even a vice president, is above the law. Within hours, Adam Schiff resigned from his committee roles under pressure. Marcia Alden was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Vice President William Halbridge was formally charged with obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit judicial interference, and abuse of executive power. The country watched as he was escorted from a private government vehicle in cuffs, live on every channel. Later that evening, on her show, Judge Jeanine Pirro offered a final reflection: they tried to silence a judge, but forgot that the truth doesn't scare. It fights back. And for once, even her fiercest critics had to admit, she didn't just hold the gavel. She dropped the hammer.